This is the Torg Eternity Delphi Council Debriefings, where the storm has a name. We are your hosts, Jay and Leamon, and today we will be getting back to the Vitality Paths from Pan-Pacifica. We'll be starting with the Path of Suppleness, but before that, we actually did get an email. So I wanted to read that email. And it's a question, so we will answer the question. And also, you can email us at torgdcd@gmail.com. So this one is from T, who has written us before. So thank you for the previous emails, and thank you for this one. It says, "Hi guys, as ever, thank you for continuing to field my queries. The group's Nile Magician has two spells for which I'd appreciate some clarification: Figment and Glamour. In both cases, the wording says outstanding, as good, and the caster may use his conjuration skill instead of the interaction skill when making an interaction attack. The repeated actions restriction of the multi-action rule does not apply for this attack. He routinely uses these spells to create illusory monsters and hazards for mass intimidation attempts. So I'm wondering if this means he gets to intimidate large groups of enemies with no multi-target penalties. Thanks, T." So the big thing is it allows multi-action, not multi-target. So they are two completely separate things in the current Torg Eternity rule set. In classic Torg, multi targeting was a option for multi actions, but in Torg Eternity they're completely separate. You count them separate. If something says you get to ignore the first -2, or you get to ignore all penalties to either a multi action. That only means multi-action. Ignoring them for multi-target only means multi-target. So what this is specifically referring to is normally, even if you have like a perk Magister, which you can cast multiple spells per round, this makes it so that, or that allows you to do multiple spells per round, but you still would not be able to use the same skill twice. So that's the big definitive thing for multi-action, is you can't use the same skill twice in your multi-action. So you can't use firearms twice. You can use firearm and taunt, or you can do trick and melee weapons, things like that. But what this would allow you to do, because these conjurations, these Figment and Glamour are conjuration, they would allow you to then use conjuration as an interaction. So you could cast as well as do the interaction skill when making an attack. So that's kind of what it's allowing. It is in no way, shape, or form allowing you to just, without penalty, try to use your conjuration to intimidate everybody on the, all the enemies on the board, all 100 Nile shock troopers or whatever. That's not what the intent was. So Jay, did you have any clarifications in case I stumbled there or anything?
Yeah, no, that's pretty much it. Yeah, when I first saw that it's about Figment and Glamour, I was like, oh boy,
Yeah.
it's gonna be, but it ended up being pretty straightforward. I guess the one like little thing would be that it's specifically to that attack.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't let you do other stuff as well. So you can use Conjuration to cast a spell, or you can use Conjuration for like a skill test that's required for something
Mm-hmm.
like a DSR, and then do that one interaction attack
Right.
in addition to that. Notably, it doesn't get rid of the -2
Mm-hmm.
for doing the multi-action. It just lets you do it.
Right.
But it also doesn't let you do an additional other conjuration stuff either. It's just that one.
Right. So it wouldn't allow, as you said, you couldn't say cast a spell with conjuration, and then if you had a DSR that, say, conjuration would allow you to complete a step, do that, and then do this conjuration as an
Yeah.
intimidation. So it would allow you uh, as a one time thing, not just an infinite number
Yes.
of things. So hopefully that answered your question. And for anybody else, yes, you can email us at torgdcd@gmail.com and we will answer your question like we answered T's. So thank you very much. Now we can move on to the Path of Suppleness from the Pan-Pacifica source book. This one is if you look at or listen to any of our previous Vitality Paths, you will know that there is both a prerequisite as well as a path skill. Both of these are the same, so the prereq is you need at least 3 adds in unarmed combat, and the path skill is also unarmed combat, so that's kind of your main skill that will advance your path. Um, so if you start off with this path, you're at least going to have the first 3 techniques. And the first technique is called Break the Fall, which is as long as the hero can touch a surface or object, he may spend 2 shock to take half falling damage. So basically, this can be applied to many various situations where your character is falling or sliding. As long as they can reach out and touch that cliff face or the slope before it drops off or anything, they can spend 2 shock and take half the falling damage, which sometimes can add up pretty
Yep.
majorly. So, what are your thoughts on Break the Fall?
It's one of those powers that doesn't seem very good because, like, how often do you take falling damage, really? Although in the previous talks of adventures, I have had one character die from falling damage in my campaign, so it does happen occasionally. Um, and 2 shock, like, half the time the falling damage might just be 2 shock. So,
Mm-hmm.
but anything that halves the damage from something is pretty good.
Right.
Just the way the system works. And what you'll find is it's not so much about, oh, okay, now if I'm going to take falling damage, I'm going to take less. Now, as a character, you can go out of your way to find ways to take falling damage or not worry about falling
Mm-hmm.
damage. If you're in a plane and it's crashing, you don't need a parachute necessarily, because half, like, the higher the number gets, that half actually
Right.
really helps. So you have to kind of like make it work for you, and then it can open up other avenues. Like, if you've ever played like any survival games, suddenly taking less falling damage is usually a huge, like, something that opens the game up for you.
Mm-hmm.
Also, when they say object, I'm pretty sure they mean like a large physical object, just
Yeah.
because you're holding
Here's
a
my
lighter
wallet
in
that
your
I just.
yeah, yeah, that doesn't count. It's like if you're falling and there's a crane or something,
Mm-hmm.
you could go against that. So yeah, it's better than it seems. It's like not crazy, but if you make it work for you, it can be pretty handy.
Right. It's one of those, again, as you said, at first look, it's like, when's that going to come up? But as you pointed out, it's then up to you as a player to go, when can I make this happen?
Hmm.
When is this going to be really cool? This would be great for, I mean, if you're doing a wire fu type, character that you want to have, running along stuff and you don't want to have to worry about falling,
Yep.
then it's
Parkour.
yeah, do that. So pretty cool. Um, so let's move on to 2 grappler. So grapple attacks are favored. If the hero has the wrestler perk, he ignores the -2 damage penalty on a standard success and may spend 1 shock to gain a +2 bonus to damage on the attack. So that's kind of a separate thing. So if you have the perk, you ignore 2 damage penalty and you can spend a shock to gain +2 bonus. So for the shock, you're actually kind of increasing damage on a standard success by 4 because you're getting rid of the -2 penalties. You're giving yourself a 2, and then the way I read it is even if you got like a good or outstanding that didn't have the penalty, you would still be able to spend the
Yeah,
shock to give yourself a +2 bonus. So that's kind of nice. So what are your thoughts on Grappler?
like this entire path is about grappling.
Hmm.
So there is no shot that you are not going to take Wrestler. So Wrestler, I believe, was originally a Living Land backer perk that got rolled in, right? Eventually, I think in the Nile book or somewhere.
Heroes maybe.
Yeah. But so normally if you take Wrestler, that makes your unarmed, your grapple attacks favored and you lose the -2 damage.
Hmm.
So that's just if you don't have Wrestler, you get Wrestler
Right.
essentially. But then if you do have Wrestler, you get an extra +2 damage for one shock, and +2 damage for one shock is like a steal.
Hmm.
Uh, and like it's very good. And the thing about grappling is it does do your unarmed damage. So if you have other things enhancing your unarmed damage, like Gene Mod claws or something like that, that will work as well. So uh, I guess it depends if you count that as the bonus stacking or not. But either way, +2 effective +4, like you said, is huge for
Hmm.
one shock.
Yeah, as you said, if you're going for this, we might have. I didn't read the description, but the description is this path focuses on grappling, binding, and throws, with the goal being immobilization or subduing of an opponent. Uh, Real world examples are Greco Roman wrestling and judo. So, yes, this is definitely what you want to be doing. You definitely are going to want that wrestler perk, and this is just going to help and you do the thing that you decided you wanted to do when you chose this path.
Mhm.
Um, so you're going to get both of those as well as the next one, um, because you need 3 ads to get this path, and that means you get the first 3 techniques. So stunning throw: when a hero hits with an unarmed attack, he may spend 2 shock to render the target vulnerable. So what are your thoughts on the spend 2 shock and now they're vulnerable as well as taking damage?
That one's kind of for me. By the time, like, if you want to make someone vulnerable, someone else is going to need to, 'cause it's already too late for this attack, right? You've
Mm-hmm.
already hit them.
Right.
So it's going to make them vulnerable for future attacks, for like either next round, maybe if you get to go first, but like otherwise for other players shooting in.
Mm-hmm.
But then you might have to worry about friendly fire because you're in melee combat with them. So I don't know how useful it is. Now, if it was stymied, that would be very good
Mm-hmm.
because it'd make it harder for them to oppose being restrained
Right.
when you grapple them. So, it's okay, but if you are in a situation where you can hit them and make them vulnerable and then get out
Mm-hmm.
yourself, making yourself vulnerable as well, but or very vulnerable, that it's a possibility if you don't want to do an interaction attack.
Right. I can also see this if you and that guy are kind of off to the side and everybody else is dealing with other people, you
Mhm.
know, for that chance of the hey, somebody has a seize the initiative card, so I'm going to go before them, next round or whatever, that you can kind of maybe plan to keep them vulnerable so you can
Or I
set them up.
guess also if there's a bunch of you are melee
Right,
characters, like
right.
if other players are melee. And the one thing I wanted to mention is as you said, you need unarmed combat is the key skill or whatever. This is a very streamlined one, right? Like a
Right.
lot of other paths, you need a whole bunch of other
Mhm.
skills. But this is, I mean, there are other skills that come up in here, but you can basically just focus and mastery into unarmed, and it's the skill you need to unlock the path, but it's also the skill you're going to be rolling to hit. So
Mhm.
it's a pretty like zeroed in, gets pretty powerful kind of one.
Right. Um, so let's move on to chokehold, number 4, the fourth technique. When inflicting one or more wounds on a restrained target, and this is after any soaked damage attempts. Uh, spend 2 shock to convert all wounds to 3 shock each. So basically, this is I want to subdue instead of kill.
Mhm.
So, or sometimes it's so hard to get the wounds, and they might be so close to being knocked out with shock
Yep.
that flipping the wounds to 3 shock each can boom get rid of that opponent real fast. So, what is your thought on chokehold?
Yeah, this is basically pre-errata dazing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and if you ever ran with like people using dazing weapons and dazing swords, useless against undead or
Mm-hmm.
like anything that doesn't take shock. But against anything that takes shock, it's crazy.
Right.
So, because you do the shock you would do normally plus all those wounds. So if you were doing 2 wounds to something, that's 10 shock instead. And a lot of enemies have 3 wounds, but they don't have 10 shocks. So
Right.
it often uh, will take things out quicker. It's but then it's useless on some things. So and the thing is, because you could control, it does cost 2 shock, which is kind of a fair amount in the middle of a fight. But it's one of those things that you can wait to use it until it's time to just this is the part that chokes them out. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so the combat's over at that point. So it doesn't really matter that you took shock because you knocked them out.
Right. And you were correct, but I did want to do the math for people because
Okay.
how we're getting to say 2 wounds equals 10 shock when it said each wound is 3 shock each is because if you do damage and it's enough to do 2 wounds, you're also going to do 2 shock per wound. So on that part of the damage table, it would say 2 wounds, 4 shock. So your
Yeah.
2 wounds become 6 shock. The 4 shock that you get from that base is still there, so that's 10 shock. And as you said, there's very few anything that has more than 10
Yeah.
shock, and unless they've went spirit, as a min max type thing. Um, so yes, that's a very very powerful way to take out something that's not immune to shock. But then it also makes sense that you're not choking out undead or
Right.
you know
Robots.
robots and stuff like that. Um, so number 5, joint lock. Prior to making an attack roll, spend 1 shock to improve the success level of a successful grapple attack by 1 step, or spend 3 shock after hitting to do the same. So it gives you a little choice. Before you roll, you can spend 1 shock and hope, or after the roll, you can spend 3 shock and know exactly how things are going to end up. So, what are your thoughts on joint lock?
I think this one's pretty niche. I don't know about the 1 shock to gamble.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some players might do it, but I have a feeling that usually if this is your character that you're specializing in grappling, you're probably gonna hit. You're probably gonna get a good hit against most things. So I would see a lot of people would be more likely to spend a possibility than to spend shock, in my opinion. And again, the 3 shock, that I would find that more likely to be used because it's a sure thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have the shock to spare, then sure, bump it up to outstanding. I believe it's really meant to, like, I believe the idea here is if you get your standard hit, you can bump it up to good. But I feel that it's either going to be miss or outstanding half the time. So I don't know how often it'll get used. Maybe people with more experience with this have a different opinion, but that's
Mm-hmm.
how I would look at it.
Yeah, this definitely when you read this with number 2, you can see where those two would link. Whether or not that gets a lot of use is
Mhm.
kind of dependent on the character, the stories, the opponents, etc. And yes, the just spending a shock to possibly that is kind of a little weird, kind of but I know people that do it. I know people
Okay.
who would gamble on that every single time just because why not? The 3 shock for the definitive yes. I know what my success level is, and I want to raise it by 1. Spend 3 shock if you have it, if you're comfortable with it. So this one I'm gonna say is kind of up in the air on which I don't want to say it's good, don't want to say it's bad. I'm gonna say it's gonna depend on the player, the situation, etc. Um, so number 6, deep reserves. Recover one shock as a simple action. If the hero has center self, the shock recovered from center self increases to 1 BD plus 3. So that would be you roll your bonus dice. If it hits that infinity, it's going to explode, and then you add 3 shock onto that. But what are your thoughts on deep reserves?
So, that really depends on, it's a simple action,
Yes.
right? But you get multiple simple actions each turn.
Yes.
Can you do this multiple times in one turn?
I would say yes.
Then it's insane. Because you get what, three, right?
Two to three.
Two.
Two,
Um,
3.
so without anything else, get 2 to 3 shock per turn. Is really, 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 really good. Get 3 BD plus 3 is crazy, which, I mean, it makes me think it's probably not intended to go that way because it's so extreme. But also the other thing is center self normally gives you 1 BD plus 1.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have center self already, this basically gives you a plus 2 bonus to it. And it is worth mentioning that center self does have a prerequisite of you need to spend half an hour in quiet contemplation when you wake up
Mm-hmm.
for it to work. And now center self is a once per scene situation. So that's why
Oh,
you can
okay.
only do it once.
Sorry. Yeah.
Whereas this, well, this doesn't say anything about that, right? So it
It just
doesn't it doesn't mention you need to do the rest. You don't need to do the half-hour meditation. You It's a simple action. It's not limited to once per scene. But
so
I would,
here's how I would read it, and then you can.
yeah,
So I see. Okay, the first part is not dealing with center self at all. So it's just recover one
correct.
shock as a simple action. So I would say you would, as me as a game master, I would say you want to spend one of your simple actions to get a shock, you can. If you want to spend 2 to get 2 shock, you can. Those are your simple actions. Now, if you have center self, and you take that half hour to get your centered self uh, centered, you get yourself centered,
Yeah, yeah,
and you have that once per scene, then that instance of it is the center self instance of it,
right.
and therefore that one would be 1 BD plus 3, but all your other ones would still give you 1
Just one.
per.
Yeah, yeah, because it does say uh, the shock recovered from center self
Mm-hmm.
increases to 1 BD plus 3. So that makes sense. That's still once per scene, and then just having one per simple action. I mean, it still could be really good. That effectively, if we're allowed to spend it multiple times, could even be 1 BD plus 4 or 5, whatever.
Right.
I can't remember how many simple actions you get, but yeah. So either way, uh, considering it costs shock to
Yep.
do all the other stuff, this is very good. And most paths would kill to have this.
And it's 6 though. You can't get
Yes.
it with another. You'd
Yeah.
have to go
Only
here.
masters.
You'd have to get here, master out your unarmed combat, and then go to another path and use
Yeah.
this on other path. But no, I think this is nice. Again, even though it might seem like a low number, 01, it's basically free every round that you're
Mhm.
conscious and could do something. Where other things like uh, when you do the recover action, you have to kind of get away from combat. You kind of don't do
It's an
anything
action.
else, and it's your action. Or second wind, you have to have the card to do it. So this is just every round. I'm getting recovering 2 shock that I spent on one of the other things that I've done, so I
Yeah.
can.
Like
I might not be keeping up with my shock loss, but I'm mitigating some of it.
that does kind of make the joint lock one shock much better. If you could just spend that every single turn
Mm-hmm.
without worrying about it, because you can get it back with
Right.
deep reserves, then sure, gamble every turn. What does it matter?
And let's go ahead and point that out again. While you can't mitigate the shock on doing the technique, you
Right.
definitely can heal the shock outside of the doing of the technique. So this would be one that you could do it, spend the shock as long as you have the shock to do it, and then do the deep reserves, gain back a shock or two, and then do something else or do the same thing over again and spend that shock. So that's how the mitigation work is. You have to have the shock to apply it. You have to take the shock as damage, but then you can heal the shock later. So yeah, as you said, those it could kind of give you that first joint lock free. So hey, I could just spend and gain back and for that random chance,
Same
or
with the grappler
yeah,
damage.
or the grappler damage, and then for the definitive, then you're basically having a net loss of one shock, which is, and unless you're about to get KO'd from shock damage, why not?
Yep.
So yeah, I think deep reserves is a pretty nice uh, power technique. It seems really simple, but when you realize how it affects things, I think it's very good. Um, So let's move on to 7, immovable object. Prior to being attacked with maneuver, so this would be an interaction attack of maneuver, the hero may spend one shock to make his maneuver defense 20. Additionally, when struck with an unarmed combat attack, he may spend 2 shock to gain a +5 bonus to toughness for the attack, which stacks with any other toughness bonuses. So the question about stacking is just put the rest right
Yeah.
there. So what are your thoughts on immovable object?
It's kind of weird because if you're making a dexterity based unarmed combat martial artist, you're almost incentivized to already have taken maneuver pretty
Mm-hmm.
high. By the time you have an unarmed of 7, it's possible your maneuver defense might be like near 20, like who knows. But that said, the defensive 20 could come in useful, although I tend to find not as many enemies use maneuver that
Mm-hmm.
often. Also because dexterity is such a good stat for like offensive attacks and everything that many players characters tend to have a high dex, so
Mm-hmm.
maneuver doesn't really get as much payout as like a taunt does a lot of the time. But that's still okay to take your defense to 20, and it's only one shock,
Mm-hmm.
so that could be your free shock or whatever. However, the second part, the 2 shock to gain +5 bonus to toughness that stacks, is very good.
Right.
uh that's great. Now there is a limitation that has to be against unarmed attacks,
Mm-hmm.
but let's keep in mind that that includes dragons, Boraka, vampires,
Yeah.
like all of that
Or
kind of
just your
stuff.
standard Edenos with claws.
Yeah, yeah. But so the things that like I guess what I'm saying is like there are like weenie creatures
Ah.
that
Mm-hmm.
use unarmed attack, but usually the ones you're worried about do big damage, like with unarmed attacks. That tends to be where some of the higher damage attacks in the game
Mm-hmm.
actually come from, is unarmed attacks. So getting a +5 toughness to those, unless you have totally forsaken your strength and toughness already, that could very well be the difference between life and death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is like the second part is the main part. The +5
Mhm.
stacks with everything toughness. The first part is decent. If I had anything less than 20, I would probably spend that shock
Yeah.
because it's one shock. Just if somebody was maneuvering against me. So, like you said, the question is how often are you going to get maneuvered against because of
Yeah.
all the points you stated. But otherwise, no, I think this is the the 5 toughness is extremely good, and the it's like the cherry on top of the sundae is is maneuver. So let's move on to Shake the Tree, number 8. I almost forgot that.
Yeah.
Uh, Shake the Tree. Before rolling any bonus dice from an unarmed combat attack, spend a 2 shock to roll the bonus dice twice and take the highest result. So, what are your thoughts on Shake the Tree?
Would you say you have to commit any coup de grace cards before you do this?
I would say no.
Okay. Would they be included in the reroll if you did them after?
What I would do is I would have the dice rolled,
Mhm.
and you get your 2 separate dice at that point. You choose the highest, and then the coup de grace get added
Gets added to that?
to that.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, either way, it's good. It's very good. I mean, we know kill shot is good, so this is the same kind of thing, but for unarmed attack. And I mean, oftentimes unarmed attacks, because you're not a dragon,
Mm-hmm.
usually, your unarmed attacks. I've seen there's a few that get ridiculously high, like the dwarf dragon armor claws can become an issue, but usually unarmed, unless you're going kind of cheesy with it with cyberware, isn't as crazy as some of the other stuff. But getting to roll your bonus dice twice really helps, especially if you can guarantee that you're going to have one higher success level than whatever you did.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, it's pretty good. Uh, and the thing is, the only issue is you have to do it first before seeing what you would roll.
Right.
It's possible you could have rolled awesome in the first place and not needed to spend the shock, but let's be real. If you're given the option to roll them twice, you're going to do it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you're going to roll, and you're going to roll again, and you're just going to go, okay, go with the first one, and yeah, that was good. If
Yeah,
it
because you
took
take
it
the highest.
yeah it took a couple of shock. Oh well, and then if you roll better the second time, you're like great. Or if you have 4 dice, you
Yeah.
just split the two, roll 2 over here, 2 over there, and it didn't matter which one was first or second because they were at the same time. Do it that way. So yeah, path of suppleness. What are your overall thoughts of this path?
I mean, it's got like I said, it's very specialized and it really does what it does well.
Mm-hmm.
Whether So here's the thing. In almost every role-playing game in the world, when a player says, I want to grapple this person, everyone is like, no, God. But in all honesty, Torg's grappling is relatively straightforward
Mm-hmm.
compared to a lot of other games. So it's just the remembering that you need to get a good to restrain, and then the -2 unless you get the good. And then there's like the can you move them with you?
Mm-hmm.
And like what can they do on their turn and all these sorts of things, but overall it's easier than some games I've played, I'll just
Yes,
say that.
where you have to read
And
5 pages to figure out
yeah,
what to do.
and this path really gives you bonuses on pretty much everything you need to do. Whether grappling is a good long-term strategy against what you're going to be facing is a different story, but if you can say that you put a T-Rex in an ankle lock, uh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and even if you don't, just if this is where you went, the last two apply to anything, not just
True.
grapples. So like the +5 to toughness, I don't have to be grappling when that happens, and I can spend 2 shock and take the highest damage result on the bonus die for any unarmed attack. So it doesn't have to be a grapple. Yes, it works with the grappling stuff, but
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be. So there there's a lot in the deep reserves, it doesn't have to be grapple. So it fits, like you said, it's very focused and fits, but you're not locked into only grappling. It's just you
Ironically.
excel in grappling. Um, so let's now move on to Path of the Sword. The
Boy.
prereq is melee weapons, 3 adds, and this is another one where the path skill is the same as the prereq, so it is also melee weapons. Needing to have 3 adds in it means that you will get the first 3 techniques when you choose. When you pay for the path, it focuses on the sword. Oh, wow, that's quite obvious as an implement of both combat and self-improvement. While traditionally the sword has been the focus of such arts, any hand-to-hand weapon is suitable. Examples on Core Earth include Kendo, Iaido, and more exotic schools, such as Fairbairn Sykes Knife School. Uh, so, unless specified, the techniques may only be used when a character is using a melee weapon. Okay. So, technique number 1, break the fall, which we've already discussed. And
Yeah.
no, it is not a misprint. It was brought up multiple times after the preview was released. Wait, is this just a copy paste error? No, it is not a copy paste error. And you can look on page 22 of the Pan-Pacifica sourcebook and see a sword being used to break the fall as the Maru, the electric samurai, is sliding down a building with her sword kind of slowing her fall. So that's the mental image. It's first technique. You, instead of touching it with your hand to slow it down, you kind of and how many animes, cartoons, TV shows, movies is something like this done? It's
Yeah.
they're just all over. So uh, it is something in the cinematic type stereotypes.
Pirate
So
movies,
pirate
going
movies.
down the
Oh yeah, yeah, the
sail.
sail, all of that. So this is definitely able and visually fits with a sword or other sharp weapon. We don't need to get into the details because we've already talked
Well,
about
there are
or
some
or
slight
okay,
differences
go for it then.
because you do need to have a melee weapon.
Yes, you have to have it.
Unlike in suppleness where you don't.
Mm-hmm.
You can so there is a slight limitation there in that you do need a melee weapon, so it's not quite as good.
Right.
And yes, it is worth mentioning, although yes, there is a picture of Maru doing that. It's not just based on that one picture.
Right.
There's tons of examples in media all over the place. And the other thing I want to add before we get to where it might become important is that while this is called Path of the Sword, it is for any melee weapon,
Mm-hmm.
including two-handed weapons.
Right.
So it can be any kind of melee weapon. It does not have to be a sword. Now, swords are generally the most common
Right.
melee weapon, but if you have an impact hammer, works with that too.
Right. Right. So yeah, that's a good point for one of the techniques coming up. The second technique, staying alive. When attacked, after the attacker makes the action total, so the attacker rolls, they get their total. The Swordmaster may spend 1 shock to gain a +2 bonus to melee defense. So this is after are they going to hit me or not? Oh, the if if they only would have been 1 or 2 points less, they wouldn't have hit me. You can spend 1 shock and not get hit, or
Yep.
drop a success level. So what are your thoughts on staying alive?
That's pretty good actually, because yeah, 1 shock to not get hit at all. So that's at the very least a savings of 1 shock.
Mm-hmm.
Or taking something from outstanding to good or good to standard uh, is also like a 1 wound less
Right.
and 2 shock. So if it's almost always a good trade-off to it, unless you were just hit so hard it doesn't matter, or you happen to be like just 1 or 2 points off in the other direction. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, there are times where it won't be useful just because the way the math lands, but most of the time it should be able to help you. So pretty good for just like the level 2 ability.
Right. Plus, if it's not gonna help you, so you
Yes,
don't have to. So that's an important part because some of them, like the one we talked earlier, was kind of a guess. Is it going to help? Is it not going to help? This one, is if it's going to help or not. So, in 9 out of 10 situations, I know there's a few threats out there that have the numbers a little hidden or whatever, but
Right.
otherwise, no, you know if this is going to help you or not. Well, this one you would know what the action total is. So, flourish number 3 after hitting a target with a good or outstanding hit. To spend 1 shock to make the target stymied. So this is close to what you were saying. You
Yeah,
wish the
it's
the
better.
cho- oh, the stunning throw from 3 over in Path of Suppleness was. So flourish.
Yeah, this is just better because it only costs 1 shock instead of 2 and makes them stymied. Now, situationally, stymied would work better for the grappler because that would affect their chances to get out of the grapple.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas here, it's not really specific, but it's the same situation. Making vulnerables kind of awkward if you're in melee. So with this, making them stymied is good for all kinds of things,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes back to their turn, obviously. So I think it's pretty just good, and it also, never discount the ability to stymie someone for soaking
Right.
purposes, right?
As well as having a melee weapons, and even with the vulnerable with the unarmed combat, having a fighting skill that allows you to give vulnerable and stymies
Hmm.
to opponents is rare
Yeah,
actually because
irrespective of the opponent's interaction defenses,
hmm
it's pretty good. Yeah.
so let's move on to the technique number 4, cut the center prior to attacking. So this one you're gonna have to wonder about. Spend 1 shock to gain a +2 bonus to the attack, or spend 3 shock to apply a +2 bonus to both attack and damage. So what are your thoughts on cut the center?
It seems good, but man, I don't know. Like, again, this is the 1 shock. I mean, +2 is decent.
hmm
1 shock for +2 is fine, but it's the do I want to spend enough to do the extra damage? Now, I guess the thing is, a plus to damage is always a sought after commodity.
hmm
So if you spend the shock and you miss, that's basically guaranteeing a possibility being spent on this
Right.
boost, right? Because remember, the big thing about Torg is generally not whether you can do it or not, but how many resources you expend to do
To
it.
do it.
So
Right.
it's just be aware that if you're taking this and spending like 3 shock a pop, you're probably going to be playing cards or using extra resources to guarantee that it hits because +2 damage is pretty good. And I mean, oftentimes that +2 to hit might be enough. You might just hit anyway. So
hmm
I think it's pretty good.
Yeah. I would agree. It also it does have that sense of almost the gambler fallacy, throwing good money after bad. You know,
Right.
I've already sunk. Was it sunk cost? I think that's the
Yeah,
actual
sunk cost fallacy.
fallacy where I've already put all of this stuff into it. I already put my 3 shock. I might as well throw this card. Oh wait, okay, I might as well spend this possibility.
Yeah.
Hey, do you got a supporter over there? um, but like you said, the +2 attack that could get you a better success level, and then
Hmm.
add the damage could get you the better the higher wound ratio on the chart. So number 5 is Cyclone. I know this might have come up before, but I don't remember it.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and go over it again. Spend 1 shock to ignore the first 2 points of multi-targeting penalty. This is what we talked about on the question
Yeah.
for today, uh, which is basically the whirlwind perk, spending a shock for it. But if you do have the whirlwind perk, the hero may ignore the first 4 points of multi-targeting with 1 shock, or the first 6 points with 3 shock. So you get to choose. So if you have whirlwind, you could just do whirlwind, or you could do the cyclone part, spend the shock and ignore more points of penalties. So, what are your thoughts on Cyclone?
It is worth taking this path purely to get this power. it, this is entire mobs of goons dead in one instance.
hmm
It a wave of Adinos crests the hill, and you just wipe them all out. Uh, the amount like -6, ignoring 6 is crazy.
Yeah,
uh, that yeah, it's very very good.
because 6, normally on something like that, you're probably even with the penalties, you're probably multi-targeting 3 or something, having that -4 to begin with. So if you're still
Mhm.
going to have that -4, 7, I'm attacking all
Yeah.
7, 8, whatever. Yeah, they will. Yes, you will have penalties, but you will also usually know whether you can handle it or not. And at some point, you can, and then this just allows you to just go loose, just break loose off some
Like
Enos
that's
or shock troopers or whatever.
in my experience, that's what melee characters have excelled in Torg is
Yeah.
clearing
Yes.
large groups,
Groups.
and this will makes it even more insane.
Yes. So number 6. So with number 6, you have to get mastery with melee weapons. Then you're allowed to buy your add up to 6. Then you can get break the blade, which is after hitting with a called shot against a target with the intent to disarm. So it's kind of specific. You spend 1 shock to compare the damage against the weapon's toughness, which is a 12 for most weapons. If a wound is inflicted, the weapon is unusable for the remainder of the scene. If the target is reality rated, they may make a soak damage test to prevent the damage as if they were taking the wounds. So, what are your thoughts on Break the Blade?
I don't think this is really all that good. Attacks to disarm happen so infrequently, and it's always a question of why would I do that when I could just take them out or do damage, or this at least potentially forces them to soak, so it
Right.
uses a possibility. And there is a little bit of play in that, okay, the weapon only has a 12 toughness, so if you're going up against some uber super toughness guy, then maybe it's better to do that. But yeah, it's just the fact that it has to be a called shot.
Mm-hmm.
Although you could potentially combo it with cut the center to cancel that, but so it has to be a called shot. You have to spend a shock. You then have to damage the weapon. You have to do a wound, which
Mm-hmm.
means you have to do at least 17 damage, which is a fair amount. Um, and then the weapon is they're disarmed, and strangely, the weapon is unusable for an entire scene. So
Right.
you can't even pick it up yourself, right? The only thing I'm like looking at is if this like can pop a darkness device out of someone's hand or something. Um, I mean, sure, like in Isle, there might be like some like cool magic swords you want to
mm-hmm.
get people away from, but I don't really see it being that big in Pan Pacifica. And there's many things that you can't even disarm, like if it's part of a power suit
Right.
or a gene mod or something like that. So yeah, this one, in my opinion, should probably have been like level like the +3
Mm-hmm.
maybe instead. But I know, but then again, like 5 was so awesome that okay, this is like the opposite of the suppleness one where 5 was okay and then 6 was amazing. This is like 5 is amazing, 6 is okay.
Right. This is one I don't want to go this far, but it almost seems like a solution in search of a problem
Hmm.
because I mean, there's many times in the cinematic, movies, TVs, etc., where you do have that magical, mystical weapon that when the wielder holds it, their toughness is, say in Torg terms, they get bonuses to attack with
Yeah.
it, they get toughnesses, blah blah blah, and this would be the great way to nullify that. But then the game master is making that so that
Yeah.
this can be used against that. So it's like, and then it's like, is that fair? If the game, well, he chose it, so he definitely wants to use it at some point. So to me, that's kind of the thing. I can definitely see where it's coming from. I've seen enough of the TV shows, movies, and that where this makes sense thematically, but in actual play, I'm not sure how often this
Yeah.
would come up. And if every single big bad end guy had a big sword or weapon that required this, then I would feel like, oh great, Game Master is definitely just doing this to make it difficult for us and make me have to use this. But no, it's thematically. I don't know how often it'll be used.
Yeah.
So let's move on to number 7, No Mind. No dash or a little hyphen in there,
No
mind.
mind.
The hero has so attuned herself to her art that she may use her weapon to defend against attack from missile weapons, firearms, and energy weapons. When attacked after the action total is made, the hero may spend 1 shock to use her melee defense instead of dodge. So, what are your thoughts on No Mind? I get to spend a shock and switch my defense.
Very good, since you get to do it after the action total is declared. So again, you
Hmm.
know if it's going to even work or not.
Right.
And that's at the very least spending 1 shock to avoid taking 2. At like the least. So
Right.
that is a no-brainer. Very good, because you have no doubt you have at least 7 ads in melee. So your defense is probably better than your dodge, but I mean, who knows? Maybe not, but I'm going to bet it is. So yeah, seems like it might not be like a huge leap, but it's going to be pretty good, I'm
Hmm.
thinking.
Yeah, I would think the same way because you have to master this. Your dodge, therefore, you couldn't have mastered, so that's
Mhm.
going to be a +5 at the most. They're both based off of dex, so unless you have some mystic, some psychic effect, mystic or magic or miracle effect on you that is going to raise that specific dodge defense and not your melee, this is
Yeah,
guaranteed to
that
be
one
higher.
cyber eye.
Right. So no, I think this is great. 1 shock, and you know if it's going to work or not, and that could be work as in I'm not taking any damage at all, or I'm reducing a success level because this
Mhm.
got me to a lower success. So very nice. Let's move on to number 8, perfect timing. Spend 1 shock to interrupt and make a single melee combat attack as a free action against one target. After the interrupt, the attack resolves normally even if the melee attack would KO the enemy. If the enemy is KO'd, the hero may spend 2 shock to nullify the attack entirely. So, what are your thoughts on perfect timing?
Seems really good. Like a free extra attack. Yes, sir. Sign me up for 1 shock, and then maybe you get tap back 3 shock to take them out completely if you took them out. Um, yeah, it's really good, and like it's it's a free flurry that goes out of turn.
Hmm.
It's great. So
Yeah.
yeah, very powerful.
Now, as stated, even if you KO them, they get the it's a simultaneous attack. It's
Yeah,
they're opening themselves up to hit me. I'm not going to defend so I can hit them. So you can end up KOing each other, but I would rather him also be KO'd than me only be the one,
yeah, and it doesn't say it
out.
has to be an
So
attack against you.
right.
Right? Like they could be attacking someone
Oh yeah,
else,
against one
right?
target. So yeah, it's
Also, I just did think of something else about No Mind.
mm-hmm.
Because it changes it to a melee weapon defense. You can use um where was it? Staying alive with it, so you could potentially increase your defense
Ah, correct.
even
Yes,
more if
more.
you need to.
Yep.
But yeah, back to perfect timing. Yeah, anytime like there's an extra attack or something extra like that, and just interrupting things in general is like almost unheard of.
Right.
Like maybe not against Jazrael, but like against anything else, it's going to be really good.
No, I think it's very good. So that is the conclusion of the Path of the Sword. So, what are your general overall thoughts of this path?
I think it's very thematic. There's a couple of like perhaps not the best ones in there, but that's made up for ones that are extremely good. Cyclone by itself is just insane. So,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, it's worth taking this perk just and whirlwind just for that. But overall, it's really good. Yeah, it is one of the more iconic paths, I
Mm-hmm.
think, but you do have to kind of work at it some of the times. Like the break the blade probably never really gonna come up, and then some of the others it depends. But having a stymie on a stick is pretty good too. So this is one of the better ones, I would say.
Mm-hmm. I would the one thing I want to say, I keep harping on it with the break the blade though. When you when the party does find that time that it's
Right.
needed,
Yeah.
and the guy who the person who's taken this path gets to use it, they're gonna feel awesome in that moment.
Yes.
They're gonna have that thing for that situation perfect, and it would feel good as long as the concept doesn't get used over and over. It becomes
I
great.
suppose there's also the other side of the equation too. If your players rely on some super crazy melee weapon, you could have an NPC
See
with
with
this
this.
show up,
Yep,
right?
yep,
And
uh-huh.
smack
Smack.
it out of their hands.
And
They can't
unusable for
use
the
it for a
scene.
whole
Yeah.
scene.
That
Exactly.
trademark weapon you have that
Yeah.
also has the sacred weapon, perk afterwards. Boom, it's
Yeah.
it's yep, not using that. So
So you don't want to do that too much, obviously, but it's an option.
yeah. Okay. So thank you very much for either listening through podcast or watching on YouTube this episode of the Torg Eternity Delphi Council Debriefings. We'll be back next time to further our deep dive into unhallowed data. Again, you can email us at torgdcd@gmail.com like T did, and we will answer your questions, comment on your comments, etc. But until then, we hope you have fun in your own Cosmverse. Bye.